Two avid hiking gurus, Peter and Duncan, both best of friends since high school, are still tight-knit as ever, and both still remain spirited admirers of the outdoors. You name it, they've hiked it. From trekking the wintry wildlands of Crater Lake to hiking the perilous dunes in Death Valley. They fear no earthly plane. If they could see it, their passion to explore it is as clear as day. Our journey takes these ardent voyagers to the rocky terrains of the Wichita Mountains in Oklahoma, brimming with rounded hills made of magmatic rocks and sedimentary large boulders. A rough destination where difficulty has no place in their middle names. Peter and Duncan checked Wichita Mountains off on their bucket list and hop onto the road without hesitation. "Road trip!" they both hollered, tossing their backpacks into the back seat of their car, and began their drive to Oklahoma. That is, until they hit a snag in the road. A blockade is preventing access to the nearest exit, and a line of cars are in view. The traffic controller walks over to them and lays their hands on their rolled-down window. "Morning, sir. What seems to be the holdup?" Peter asks. They pointed up the road, apologizing for the inconvenience with the road ahead being blocked. No way through, in or out, due to the massive rock slide earlier this morning. The traffic controller's eyes almost hinted the idea that there may have been a casualty from the cause of it. "I suggest you turn back." Peter and Duncan had no choice but nodded as they backed out from the line of traffic and rolled their way back onto the road. Their morning hiccups still didn't sway their passion to move forward with their plans, and so before you know it, they were hurrying back onto the highway, kicking up those tunes and feeling the wind in their hair. It was smooth sailing after that, as the sun, now once high above, has now begun to disappear over the horizon. That is, until their gas gauge started signaling empty. A fragment of light still hangs in the sky as they make a quick pit stop at the nearest gas station out in the middle of nowhere. The only signs of life were the headlights of other cars passing by every now and then. "I'll help fill the car. Want to head into the liquor shop and grab us some snacks for the road?" Peter suggested. Duncan threw out a thumbs up. "No problem, dude." While Peter began to fill the car up with gasoline, Duncan stepped foot into the shoddy-looking liquor shop. It was quiet, aside from the barely audible music playing in the store, almost hauntingly. After grabbing 2 coffees and candy bars, he headed for the front counter where it seemed dead, until Duncan peered closer and noticed a man slumped over the cash register, looking lifeless. "Mister, are you okay?" he shouted. The man turned his head very unnaturally, almost puppet-like, and to Duncan's shock, the man's eye sockets were bloody and without eyes. Duncan looked closer and could see a pair of eyeballs sitting by the gum and cigarettes. "I suggest you turn back!" Duncan screamed in horror and ran out of the shop without even purchasing anything, and saw Peter still in the middle of filling the car. and insisted they both get into the car right away. Peter, puzzled by Duncan's frightened eyes, had no choice but nodded. So they jumped into the car and Duncan took over the wheel. Peter still didn't understand what made his best friend jump out of the liquor shop with terror running under his skin. But they still were on the clock and knew they had to head on the road so they could make it to their hiking destination. Oklahoma wasn't too far away now, but little do these two know is that they're trailing closer to a point of no return. And yet again, they were back onto the highway. Duncan quivered, still trying to shake off the goosebumps all over his body and the unanswered questions in his head. Peter says, "Well, we should be in Oklahoma in no time. Don't sweat it." Suddenly, a strange creature jumps out in front of them. Something out of a horror movie. Half man, half deer, bellowing a howl into the misty night.
"I suggest you turn back."
Duncan sends the car to a halt to the side of the road and digs his fingers into his hair while resting his forehead onto the wheel. Frantic, shaking, and doing his best to control every fabric of his nerves, he starts to think the universe is sending them some kind of cosmic warning to not go forward. Peter confirmed with a pat on his shoulder, telling him that he didn't believe in all that mumbo-jumbo. He stepped out to check out the front of the car, seeing nothing but a bloody dent on the hood, and nobody to be seen. After getting back into the car, they pulled back onto the highway and hurried their way to Oklahoma, and to their amazement, nothing else decided to throw obstacles their way that night. So after several hours on the dark road, they finally encountered what took them so long to reach. "Welcome to Oklahoma," the highway sign read, sending a sign of relief through their veins. For now. The sun was now out and about, bright and early as they finally reached the parking lot, leading to one of Wichita Mountains' trails. The both of them now having shrugged off any unknown circumstances during their trip to get here. And with huge grins on their faces, they threw their backpacks over their shoulders and wasted no time to hit that dirt. "We're finally here," said Duncan. Peter hollers to the sky, ready to show the Wichita Mountains what they're made of. Today was going to go according to plan. How wondrous it is to be young as these two and unaware of the inevitable. So after trekking for about a mile up the mountain, Duncan reached into his backpack and felt around each nook and pocket. Disappointed, he feels his water canister might have fallen out of his backpack and should be somewhere back at the car. Being partially parched, he wanted to head back real quick to grab it. Peter threw a thumbs up and told him to go on ahead, assuring he'll meet up with him at the checkpoint near the first peak. Duncan hurries back, which didn't take as long as he thought it would, peering at the front hood once more. That bloody dent still there from the night before. He shakes his head and leans into the back seat, grabbing his water canister, which must have popped out of his backpack from the collision last night, and with the image of that creature still burnt into his brain. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Peter grabs Duncan's shoulder from behind, almost scaring him to death. Turning over to look at him, he sees Peter's pale face stained with fear. "Duncan, hurry! Hurry!" Peter cried, as they both hurried back up the trail together, Peter trailing from behind. As Duncan reaches the peak, turning around the corner, he notices faint screaming in the distance. He runs up to where the screams are coming from and finds a woman hanging for dear life at the edge of the checkpoint. The very same checkpoint Peter told Duncan they'd meet together. Duncan hurriedly pulls her up, and once she is back on solid ground, her knees fall weak as her tears seem to never stop. "What happened here?" Duncan asks. "I tried to save him." "Save who?" She reclaims that a young man was checking out the ledge, getting a better view, but he lost footing and fell over the cliff. The woman tried to grab him and did, but in doing so, slipped and fell herself. That is until Duncan came to her rescue. He was suddenly filled with an utmost sense of overwhelming dread, peering over the ledge to only find Peter, his bloody and mangled body, dead and lifeless at the bottom of the cliffside. Realizing that Peter had fallen to his death to the jagged rocks below, Duncan knew they should have turned back. He knew, but he let those signs whisk away into the wind. Stillness fills the air. The very same wind, having just gotten a lot colder.